So a viewer of the channel reached out to me recently and asked specifically, how do you create two custom post types and then go into a front end form, not the back end, and create posts for each one of those and relate them all at the same time? Now, immediately, I thought this was a pretty interesting use case. I love dynamic data. I love forms as well. I mean, because they open up such a world of possibilities. To achieve this in this tutorial, I'm going to be using Bricks Builder, JetEngine, and WS Form, but you could use other things. Those just happen to be some of the most capable in their categories. That said, if you have other stacks that you'd like me to try this with, or if you want to just see anything else in general, drop a comment down below. I'd be happy to create some tutorial content for you. Let me give you a demo before we dive in and show you the full step-by-step tutorial, just so you kind of know where to achieve. Obviously, this is not a front-end tutorial. This doesn't look good. This is much more of a back-end tutorial. You can style this however you want. I didn't want to make this very opinionated or anything. I just wanted to make sure it worked. The concept in our case is we're going to be adding a book and an author via one form, and then we're going to relate them both together because they live in two separate custom post types based on our architecture. And then we'll be able to display them in a grid or a list or anything like that via a nested loop. So in this very simple page, that's what we have here at the bottom. You can see each one of these is kind of its own card effectively. So there's 4 cards here. You can see each book has a title and then a summary and then the date that it was published. And then this is actually the author, but it's not pulling from the book CPT, it's pulling from the author CPT. I'll explain how we do all this just to prove to you that it works. We can add in some data and see what happens. So I went in and filled out all these different fields that we create during the tutorial here that you'll see, and then I press submit. And then immediately down here, we have the new information, just a couple of the fields, and then the author. If we come over to authors and we refresh here, we can see that now we have Mark Manson in here with the appropriate fields. At the bottom, we can see that Everything is Fucked, which is a book that he wrote, is related to it. If we go over to books, we can see that Everything is Fucked is over here, and then Mark Manson is down here related to the book. I'm extremely confident that you're going to get a lot out of this. I'm going to go through everything step by step in this tutorial. I start from a blank website here. I create the custom post types in JetEngine, the relationship in JetEngine, then the simple card layout with the nested loops that you see. Then I head over to WS Form and create a form to be able to add everything from the front end. And spoiler, I'll talk about this later in the tutorial, but I actually ran into a limitation in WS Form that is now fixed because Mark Westgard is an absolute G. So even if you don't watch this whole video, make sure you go post at him on X and tell him how great he is. I'm excited to share this with you. Stick around, we'll dive right into it. Hey, real quick, hope you're enjoying the video. I hate to interrupt, but I have to tell you about our sponsor, NitroPack. If you've been holding off on trying NitroPack, now is the absolute perfect time. They just launched brand new pricing starting at only $7 a month, so their powerful performance optimization is even more accessible than ever. Whether you're running a blog, a growing e-commerce store, or managing multiple sites, NitroPack has a plan for you. And it's not just about price. They've added 7 new optimization features to help your site load lightning fast and pass core web vitals with ease. We're talking things like LCP preload to boost your largest contentful paint score, lazy loading for self-hosted videos, and even animated image optimization so your GIFs won't slow your site down. With NitroPack, you get speed without complexity, no dev team required. Check out the new plans to see how easy it is to turn your slow site into a fast one. And the best part of it all, you can test drive NitroPack for free today via the WordPress plugin repository. And when you're ready to upgrade, just use code MJS at checkout to get yourself 10% off. Now, let's get back to the video. All right, so let's just dive in, shall we? So we have this all set up. Our environment over here, we have automatic CSS, frames, JetEngine, WS Form Pro post management, and we have bricks as our theme. If you want any of this stuff, I'll leave links in the description down below if you don't already have it. If you use those links, they're probably affiliate links. I greatly appreciate if you use them, but you don't have to. Just go get them yourself if you don't want to. Might have some discount codes down there depending on when you're seeing this as well, so maybe take advantage of that. All right, so I'm just going to rip through this here. The first thing that we want to do is we want to create some custom post types. So if we go to JetEngine and we go to post types here, we're going to just create some. So the first one would be, in our case, it would be books. And our slug can be books. We're not going to worry about meta fields just yet. We'll take care of that. I always turn on the delete metadata though. And we'll go add that. And then we can go add another one. Now you can call this whatever you want. Again, I want you to expand your mind. Use the things that I am doing here as you're probably not going to have the exact same use case, right? I want you to watch what I'm doing, digest what I'm doing, and then think about how you can use it for your use case. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments down below, and maybe I'll make a video based off of your situation next. So you can call these authors or people for the sake of it. I could see every time I do something like this, I think about what could happen. You could call it people because maybe you want like editors at some point. Maybe you'd want publisher or something like that, but then that's going to introduce a lot more stuff to the mix. We're just going to call this authors right now, and that'll be that. So, but you can call it, again, whatever you would like. So now we have two custom post types. Now they don't have any, JetEngine puts it in this beautiful little section here with the post types. So you have authors and books. You don't, we will add meta fields as we need them, but that's not the whole point of this video. We just kind of want to get some of this stuff in play. If we come down to relations, we're going to add a relationship right away. So we're going to say, we can say books to authors. You can name this however you'd like. Typically, I like to go just something to something. Books to authors. The way that I think about it is like, what makes more sense? It's like, are you going to have an author without a book? Probably not. Are you going to have a book without an author? Like you're probably not going to put an author in. It doesn't really matter, but the way that JetEngine does this is there are parent and child relationships, just the way that you have to set one and the other. Doesn't really matter too much in most of your thing. You just have to know when you're doing this, which one is the parent and which one is the child. And I just like to mirror whatever I put here. I like to mirror that down here. So for this, I'm going to say books. And then down here, I'm going to say authors right here. So now I have books to authors. Cool. One-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many. Can one book have one author? Yes. Can one book have many authors? Technically, yes, I've seen that. Can many books have many authors? Generally, it's the safest to just go here unless you have like some sort of specific requirements and you know kind of like what your data is going to look like. But in my experience, this hasn't really been an issue. So generally, I end up going many to many on most types of relationships that you would want to create. Also, again, JetEngine calls these relations, but relationships, I kind of use those interchangeably. And these are, but important to note the way that this is, if you're familiar with like ACF or something, this is a bidirectional relationship. That's important to know because sometimes relationships can be just like one directional. This is a bidirectional one, meaning you can manage the relationship over at the book or over at the author. You'll see what I mean in a little bit. Okay, so now we have our relationship set up and we have our custom post type set up. Well, that was pretty simple. So now the next thing is we need a little bit of data maybe just to kind of get us started. And we need a little bit of maybe a couple meta fields that we potentially would want to have. And so if we go into like, again, if we go back into our custom post types, maybe, you know, like what do you want for authors? Like think about your data structure when you're going to add a new author. How are you going to do this? I don't love this approach because typically with WordPress, you have a title field and it's like, I don't want to put a first name and a last name in there because it limits you in a lot of ways, or you have to do something special. Just think about this. You have Mark Szymanski as an author. Okay, well, that's in one field, the title field of this post. It's like, that's great. But now I have like, I'd have to like programmatically figure out what the first name and the last name is, which isn't like rocket science, but it's not fun. Or I could just put like Mark in that title field, or I could just put Szymanski in that title field. I'm not telling you the best way, and I'm thinking of this on the fly. So one option you could do is you put like Mark Szymanski in the title field that I'll show you here when we add one. And then you could say like first name as another field. You could have that as a text field. The rest of the stuff is not super important. And then you come down and you have a last name field. And again, what we're doing right now is we're setting up the custom post type. We're not actually entering specific authors yet or any data there. But now you have two fields, first name and last name. You could do, you know, maybe like for what else do you want for an author? Maybe you want a bio. Okay, maybe you make that a WYSIWYG or a text area. I typically just try WYSIWYG because I like to be able to do stuff right here if I need to. I like the formatting of everything. Also, we can come into labels here real quick. We didn't set this up initially, but we could call this author instead of authors plural. We come down here and do this singular. And if you're a JetEngine pro, you know that you could just type in author here and then hold down tab or click tab and you go boom, 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 boom. Look at this. It's lovely. So lovely. Autofills all that stuff based off of your first one that you put in there. Down here, this is just more settings. Typically, you want to come down here and maybe change your icon and supports the title. Yes. Maybe we want the thumbnail or the featured image to be in there, or you could make an image field. Again, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but there's some examples that you might want to, some things you might want to think about. And then the editor is like the actual block editor. A lot of times we turn that off because while the block editor is powerful for blog posts and such, and maybe sometimes with custom post types, it's just like you're creating your own fields here. You want this custom post type experience to almost feel like you're just filling out a form, and a lot of times that just adds complexity that isn't nice to have in certain cases, but a lot of times just isn't necessary. So first name, last name, bio, and then we'd have our title, which is just kind of, I would basically treat the title as like a display name, like the display of how you ever want to put it. And then if you ever need to sort anything, you could do it off of first or last because you'd have that data in there. And then bio. Anything else? Honestly, I think this is enough data for our purposes. But you could, if you wanted to, add more things here. You could add more fields for your authors, etc. Whatever. If we come over to books here, actually not right there. If we come over to books back in the custom post type here, and we go to books, we can just do the same thing here real quick. I'll just set it up again, just kind of go through some more of this stuff. There we go. And then come down here and we can get rid of our editor, maybe turn our feature image, etc. If we come down to meta fields, okay, well, what fields do we want for a book? Let's think. We're putting in information. Okay, so the title of the actual post in WordPress would probably be the title of the book. However, I will say that a lot of times, this is what I've done over on my website where I've done something kind of similar to this, but this is more in depth. A lot of books have subtitles. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but if you ever look at like a book on Amazon or anything like that, a lot of business books, they'll be like, super fans, and then it'll be like a bunch of another subtitle to it. So like you pretty much know it by the title, but there's that subtitle aspect of it. And a lot of times I don't like putting that in the main title because I feel like it just gets really long and unnecessary. And sometimes you'd want to like separate them. You'd want to write the title and then again have the subtitle as an option. So that's an idea there, just as random fields that we could throw in. Maybe I don't know, something silly as like, number of pages or like published year, if I could type. Published year, doesn't really matter how you say this, but published year. And that could be a number, could be text, could be a number, but it's going to be a number if it's just a thing. Or actually, better yet, date is probably better, truthfully. I always go date time. We talked about this before. Even if, it could just be date. You're never going to use the time. I don't want to go into this right now, but you're never going to use like the time in this specific aspect. So maybe you could use the date, but if there's any chance that you're ever going to use a time, you definitely want to go date time just because of the way that you're sorting things. Because it's very hard to like take a date and then grab a time as well and like sort based off of what those like what they convert to in like Unix. Like it's really just like a string of numbers. Just displayed as, like human readable date, basically. So again, you can play around with that, but something to that regard would be great because you could always, as long as you have all the data in this date time field, then you could show only what's pertinent. You don't need to show a month. You don't need to show a day. You can just show the year in this case. So I don't know. Takes a little bit to fully wrap your head around that, but sometimes it's the best way to go. And the last thing we put here, maybe just as one more thing, is like, I don't know, description or something, or like, let's just say summary, like a summary of the book or something. And that could be, again, maybe text area or WYSIWYG. I typically just go to WYSIWYG there and boom. So now we have that. So now we have two of these post types, right? If we go to both of these, we have authors. We can come in here. We can add a new author, right? And add, I don't read any books. So Pat Flynn, I know he does the Superfans book. So there's Pat Flynn. And then we come down here and we could say like, I don't know, this is a bio or something like that. And we'll just go like that. We'll come in here and we'll go to books and we'll go super fans. I can't remember what the subtitle is right now. I don't know when this was actually released. Let's just say 2020 or something. And yeah, this is like a little bit of a pain in the ass. We might want to change the way this works. But if we go in here again, then we could, there's a way to grab specific year or like change this, but just for the sake of it, let's just go here. You could do, like I said, you could do date too or whatever, but the point stays the same. And then summary, this is a summary. Okay. I don't really want to make this like a adding a bunch of random data thing. That's always the worst part of making these videos is just adding stupid data because you could do that on your own. So, yeah. So now the situation is okay. Well, we have these two things. We have Pat Flynn as an author, and we have one of his books that he's written. Now, presumably, if you were creating like a big Rolodex of a bunch of books and authors and all this stuff, like you might have more authors and you might have more books, and some of those books might be related to Pat Flynn, as an example. So, what you need to do is you need to come in here and you need to relate those somehow, and we created that relation, right? So let's say that you have super fans, you added it in here. Okay, well we know we have Pat Flynn, we know if we have super fans, but they're not related. So you come in here and you can change the names of how these are written and everything, like children authors and connect author. Like this is just labels, but this is the relation that we built between books and authors. So you come in here, you're on a book, and you want to connect an author. Okay, simple enough. We have a drop down of all of our authors. We only have one right now, but it's Pat Flynn, and we say connect author. And now we have Pat Flynn here. I want to show you something magical. You see how over here in like books and like Pat Flynn, there's nothing written right here. Let's go back to Superfans. Let's press update. Let's come back over here. Didn't touch anything over here. Let's just refresh this. Now we have Superfans. That is, by definition, and a pure visualization of what a bidirectional relationship is. You affect one thing in one side of the relationship, and it affects it on the other side of the relationship. If we came in here right now and we disconnected Superfans from Pat Flynn, it would also disconnect Pat Flynn from Superfans. Understand? So that's very important to understand. It's extremely powerful when you really understand how those things work. Okay. So now we have like a incredibly small amount of data here. Probably off camera, I will add a couple more because you understand how this works. But what we're going to do now is we're going to come over into and think about how I was going to say go to the form, but let's not go to the form yet. Let's just go to the front end and just do the simplest of simple like cards after I add a little bit of data in here on the back end. All right, I've added a few authors and a few books, and I've related them so that all the information is kind of tied to one another here. With Frederick Bachman here, he wrote a book called A Man Called Ovi. I don't even know, but anyway, so now they're related. Just trust me on that. There's 3 books. There's 3 authors. It's basically a 1-to-1. They're many to many. The relationship is many to many, but ultimately we just have 1-to-1. I want to keep it simple for a second because I want to make sure that we can display it on the front end, and then I want to make sure that we get to the root of the whole thing here, which is adding from the front end, because I think that's a pretty cool thing that not a lot of people cover. So let's dive into this next portion, and this is where we do not go crazy with any of this because we are just showing the very simplest methodology of what we're doing here. We're going to dive into bricks. We have ACSS and frames, but this is where the data structure meets the front end, and I cannot tell you what your layout should look like because your use case for something like this or whatever might be extremely different. All I'm going to show you is just kind of how to simply create like a very standard card with a little bit of information on it and then loop through it so you can create this for yourself and adapt it however you want. If you get to this point and you're like, I have a similar use case, how would you do this, or how would you make a specific type of grid or layout or whatever, then let me know and I could look into that and make more videos. But I'm going to make it very simple because that's what we should do at this point. So in order to do that, we're going to create a section. It's going to have a container in there. We'll throw a block in there as well. And now we have our block in here. This will be our card. And again, I just want to get the super basics in here. So we're going to have like a heading, and there's going to be a card. The heading is going to be basically our title. So in this case, I'm going to just switch this to our post title. This will be a book card, effectively. We'll call this like a book card, I guess. And then there'll be a heading in here, and we could go down to, I don't know, technically it'd probably be like an H, might be an H3. I don't know. Don't know because it's not a page structure. And then we'll do maybe some rich text, and that rich text can be, what did we say in there? We said like a summary, right? So we can come into books summary, and it'll just be a heading summary. And then maybe the publish year, we could throw that in there as well. We'll just do some basic text for that. And we'll do, this will be the published year right there. And then the last thing is like one of the, potentially, it's not the potentially harder thing, but it's the thing that like, that's easy because that's just querying all we're going to do there is we're going to query books and we're going to see what we need to see. But then the other one is we have to actually pull in the relation data, right? So in this case, if we go to book card and we say that we want to loop this, and we come into query loop and we say posts and then book. Now we have books. Now, again, this is a shitty looking card, but it's a card nonetheless. We could even put some, I don't know, we want to throw some extra padding underneath just to make it look a little bit more. How did that not save? It's kind of wacky. All right. So there we go. So now we have our simple thing here. If I go out to this link, so now we have this. It looks a little weird here with the date thing. Pretty sure we could simply fix that by just going like this, because Bricks is pretty cool in that fashion, where you have your variable, and then you can do, because it's a date field, you can just do like year or month. Look into, if you want to look more into that, look up PHP time, like variable format, stuff like that. Because then you could use month, day, year, whatever, no matter what your situation is, you can kind of adapt it to that. So now we have a simple loop of books here. Now, the problem is we don't have authors yet. Well, the thing is, you have to understand how the data works, okay? You have books and you have authors. Because authors aren't in your books, you're relating them. We have to do kind of like a little bit of a nested situation here. We have to look through this loop. We're looping through books, right? When we're in this specific item of our book loop, we have to be like, well, hey, we need the authors. Well, let's go look for the authors. Now we have to query, kind of like go look at all the authors, and we see, hey, are there any authors that are related to this specific book? So what you have to do there is you have to come inside your book card. And again, depending on how you want to set this up is whatever. I mean, we could have that discussion at a different point, but generally you have to bring in a div, and then you have to bring in some level of, text or whatever. So let's just do basic text. Let's put that within the div. And then your basic text is actually going to be, you could rename all this stuff, but your basic text is actually going to be your post title. It's going to be a post title. But why is it going to be a post title? It's not going to be a post title in here. It's going to be a different post title, because we're going to go back and we're going to loop the div. And this div is going to be a relation. In Bricks, you could do it different ways. In Bricks, like they make this button pretty easy, and generally it kind of works. But sometimes you might have trouble with that, and that's why I always use JetEngine, because any jam you ever get into with querying, you can fix with the query builder of JetEngine. But just to keep this one super simple, if you're in Bricks right now trying this, which again, if you're not in Bricks, tell me and I will create the scenario somewhere else, and tell me all this other stuff. I would love hearing from you, so I can make cool content for you guys. Basically, all I did here was I created a little div. The reason I created a div is because that's how you have to loop. You have to loop like a div or a block or whatever. You can't just loop, like you have to loop some sort of a container type situation. I know this thing's called a container too, but something like that, flex div or whatever. So then within that, you have the basic text of a post title. But again, it's confusing because you're looping the first thing, right? Let's go out to the front end. You're looping through books, right? So book. Well, when you're in this book, you're like, wait a second, we need to get the authors. The authors are not in our book post. They're related to it. So what we have to do is it's a nested loop. It's a loop within a loop. And this loop, doesn't look like a loop, but it's a loop that is looping all of the authors that are related to the specific book that we are currently in. And again, in a simple example like this, Bricks is giving you that option for like a one-click thing, but sometimes it might be more complex. Sometimes you might want to do different stuff, but in this simple case, that's what it is. So that's how it works. So you do this, and then you're good to go. Now, again, if you don't want it to look like this, you can do a lot more, but the actual data part of this is essentially done now. You have this, you can move these things however you want, you can design them however you want. The big thing that I think is actually really interesting, and you could do a bunch of different ways like all this stuff, and the part that I think the viewer Steve that I talked to you about in the beginning of this episode kind of brought up is, this is cool. That's probably a lot for some people to kind of understand the relations and everything like that. So we can talk more about that at some other point. But let's take it one step further. Let's say that you have a situation like this, and for some reason you want to have people that are users maybe of your site, or not even users. I mean, it depends on your business case. But Instead of logging into the back end, right, as we did, and creating a new book like this and creating a thing over here and doing all this stuff kind of like custom in the WordPress admin, is there a way to, once we get to this point and we have everything set up, is there a way to create a front end accessible form with something like a WS form or maybe even a Jet form builder or any other form platform that lets you do more, what's typically classified as post management? Is there any way to do that? And the answer is yes. I mean, we can do that. So the concept here and what we're going to try to achieve is we're going to go create a WS form. And what we're going to do is put in information. We're going to set up a field structure so somebody on the front end of the website could put in, and we'll just put like the form like up here or something, and we'll add to the form. We'll fill out the fields with, you know, a title, basically the same thing we did on the back end, like a title of a book, the summary, the year, or whatever. And then right underneath it'll be author information about that book, and it'll be like whatever. And we can put all that information in. And then when we press submit, the minimum viable product concept that we're trying to do is it just adds it to this list. Now, obviously, we can't really talk about this stuff without like thinking like, okay, is that a good idea to just let people do that? Let's leave that aside for a second, okay? And we can have a different discussion at some other point if it's a good idea to just let people add data to your site. But there may be a lot of instances where you want that to happen. So another instance might be, you know, similar to this is like feature requests on a website. Maybe you want people to be able to, you know, they're able to log in and add feature requests. It's a similar concept. It's just front end adding data, adding like CPT data or whatever in via a front end form, right? So you're not in the WP admin, you're doing this. Let's just talk about it. It'll make sense when you go through here. So let's take a trip down WS form. I didn't even, this is a brand new install. So, okay. So what I've done is, like I said earlier, I did post management, right? Now, this is some of the stuff that I love about WS Form. Can't speak to other plugins because I haven't used all the form builders. I've used Elementor forms initially. I used Jet form builder for a little bit. WS Form is super nice in this sense. It knows that I have, because I downloaded the post management add-on, it knows that I have created custom CPTs for author and book, okay? And because I've done that, because I've done that, it literally just knows that like I'm gonna click this, like add a book, use the template, and it has already grabbed and created. It knows the fields that we created earlier, so it automatically took those fields and was like, okay, I know that subtitle was text, I know the published time, date, published year was date time, and I know that summary was like text area. So I'm just gonna create a form that makes it very, like, I would have had to do this. You know what I mean? I would have had to think about it. I would have had to do it. No, it just automatically knows, like, these are the things that are in the CPT. You're probably going to want to add to those, right? Okay, great. So then let me just create those fields in this form, and you can edit them if you want, but like they're already mapped. They're already everything. Like it's very nice. So now we have, let me just get rid of this this thing here, skip tutorial. And now we have a book field now, or a book form, so to speak, like to add a book. Now this isn't exactly what we want to do because we don't just want to add a book. In our use case, yeah, we do want to add a book, but we're also going to have to add authors. So we're going to have to add some more fields. So basically what we want to do is we kind of want to merge two of these together, sort of in a way. Like if we go back to WS Form here and we click add new, you can kind of see that there was another one for author. So let's just, for the sake of it, just open this one up too. You can see it did the exact same thing, but it did it with the author fields, like the author CPT fields, which is great. So what we're going to try to do is basically just go over here and we're going to say, like, you know, post manage, we can say just add a book and author or whatever. So you name the thing whatever you want. And then that's what this is going to do. Now to simplify this, let's try to delete some things because we don't need to really name a slug right now. We didn't do any pictures or anything like that, but obviously you'd want a picture of the book and everything like that probably. But let's just make it simple, okay? So the title of the book, the subtitle of the book, the publish year, the summary, and then we're going to need to add some more fields from over here. So like the author name, and we could get a little bit more creative here. We could say, like, you know, first name and last name, and then like kind of conjoin that into the title. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. Am I able to, I don't think I'm going to be able to move these by myself here, like just move them over, but it doesn't really matter. We could, So these are the fields that we need here, these post management author fields, and we need them over here in our new form that we're kind of creating here. I don't think there's an easy way to necessarily like copy those just like right over, but we could just do text, text, and text area, and that'll be good enough. So text, text, and text area. We can go first name, and we can go last name, and we can go bio. And the other thing we might want to do is we might want to create another section. It's not like entirely necessary, but this could be like, if you were trying to do this, this would probably be like book details and then maybe like author details, you know, if you wanted. So we can come down here, we can add a section, and then we'll go first name, last name, and bio. And then we'll move this up here. We'll say author details. And there we go on that. Then we'll go ahead and publish this just so we are saving our changes. We can actually even move this into here and get rid of this section because that's not like super important, just to make this simple. So book details. So we're going to put our title, our subtitle, our published year, our summary, and then author details, first name, last name, bio, and then we're going to submit. Now, in this is like pretty okay. Let's go see that nothing is going to happen when you do this. Like you're not going to like, you can, you know, a typical form, you're going to like save a submission or send an email or something like that. Obviously it's not what we want to do here. So, and it already knows because because we used that template to start out that it kind of knows that we don't want to like send emails or do anything weird. We want to look into this post management situation. Post management means you are affecting some level of posts. Okay. So there's really, what we actually need is we're going to need two post management things as well, because you can see here that if we go to post management, you could say, what post type are we affecting? Well, we're only affecting book in this case. Okay. What we actually need is we need another one of these, and we're going to say down here, we'll say like author, just so we know what we're doing. Post management book, post management author. Come down here to post management author. And this one is like, you have to understand you're changing the data of two separate post types within one form. So you have to like kind of do that independently sort of one another over here in the actual like actions. So if we're in post management book for a second, what information are we changing in the book? Like, what do we want to do? Well, okay, it's book. We want to set it as published. We're literally adding a post. We're adding a book into our CMS. So if we come down here, field mapping, title is title, slug, we don't really need anything for slug. We'll just get rid of that for now. Subtitle is book subtitle, published year is book published year. If you wanted to change any of these, it's just like, this is the field that's in the form. This is the field that's in JetEngine, right? The ones we created earlier, and these are the ones that are literally like in here. Cool. So that's all good there. And then we can come down, and I think we're pretty decent on that. We're going to have to bop around here a little bit. If we come down to author, and we can get rid of slug here. This is all different because we are on a different, we have to change these fields because these aren't, these were taken, we duplicated this from the book one. So we want to take as one first name. We want to map that to the author first name field that we created in JetEngine. We want to go to last name, and we want to do right here. We want to change this to author last name. Down here, we want to change this to bio, and then author bio over here. Again, we're just mapping. Everything is a similar, similarly named. These are the form fields. These are the JetEngine fields. Cool. Now, the one thing that I'm thinking of is we actually want to do one other thing, because the title of our author is not actually, I have to change this. I thought we wanted to do this, but we can't do this. We actually don't want the title to be title. We want the title to be, ideally, we'd want it to be first name space last name, which is definitely like doable. We just need to just change this because we can't just have it be title like this. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is, instead of doing it here where we like just grab this is an easy way to do this because, we can just kind of like say what form field we want and then just say put it in the title or whatever. We're going to try to do something different here. We're going to get rid of this, and then we're just going to come down here to like field meta mapping effectively. So instead of doing it this way where you can just simply grab like, the post field and say like title of the form field, title in the form field to this, what we want to do instead is, because like it's getting confusing because there's technically two titles. We're affecting like the book title and we're affecting the author title. In this case, we're affecting the author title. The way we set this up, right, was we have first name and last name, and then we have the title of that author, just first name space last name. So we have to do a little something custom based on that architecture. You may or may not have to do that. I'm going to delete that there. I'm going to come down to custom meta mapping. And then in our meta key and our meta value, I'm going to say post title, and I'm going to say first name space last name. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to come into first name. I'm going to come up here to the top where it says field 15. I'm going to come down to last name, and I'm going to see it says field 16. You can use those to custom design basically like whatever stuff you want to put into those fields, like custom generate that. So if we come down into the meta value here, we can see field 16, field 15. So this would be like if I put in Mark Szymanski, it would be Mark space Szymanski, hypothetically. And then the meta key for post title, I believe, is just post underscore title, but we shall find out together. And then we save and close that, and then we publish this. So at this point, we have a form. We have book details. We have author details. We have information about the book at the top that gets mapped to book fields. We have information about the author at the bottom that gets mapped to author fields. So this will work right now if you want to just add books and you want to add author details very simply. Like we need to tackle the relation part between the author and the book. And we also need to, there's probably corner cases where it's like, well, is the author already listed like in here? So we're not going to deal with that just yet, but I want to go in and I want to add the form to our page very quickly. And then I want to test it just based off of the initial stuff that we have here. And then we can always adjust from there. So if we come into WS form, we drop a WS form in here. We'll throw it all the way up at the top before our stuff here. Do we have it yet? We do not have it because we need to refresh the builder in order to get that data because we had the builder open before we created that form. This post management author one is not necessary. We can just delete that. We come in here and we reload here. Now you can see again, form is what it is, but you know, it's the title of the book, the subtitle, the published year, the information here, and like the summary and everything, first name, last name, bio, etc. Submit. Let's just see what happens if we enter some data in here. So let's say, I don't know, what do we have? Think of a book, Mark. $100 million offers, whatever. Published in, let's just, for the ease of this, let's just click this and then go like 23 or whatever. And like this is, well, actually, let me try Whisper Flow. This is a cool book about money. Isn't that sick? Whisper Flow. Affiliate link in the description. Alex Hormozy. And then Alex is a cool dude. Great. All right. Now, if we press submit here, let's see what happens. Successfully added the book. Now, it didn't obviously like automatically do that, but look at that. $100 million offers. This is a cool book about money. Boom. So it worked partially. What happened was it added the book. It added the book information that we put in, right? And did it add, let's go double check because we don't have a clarification on the front end. It did add the author. It didn't add it the way we wanted to up here, so that's an issue. It's probably like a title, like a meta key thing, but it added Alex Hormozy, added this. Those are the ones that we knew what the mapping was. Have to figure out really quickly how to do that properly. I'll figure that out. But the other thing is, all right, that's great, but when somebody puts in a book and author details, we naturally would want to relate them, right? Because that's kind of like really important. So one other thing that I just thought of that, again, things like WS Form and high quality form plugins like could definitely afford you is we can actually make it a little simpler than what I was trying to do earlier. What we could do is we could just go and we could create a hidden field, like a hidden text field. So something like, for instance, we could just go like this and we could go and we could say like full name. So like author full name. I think we want to put it in separately so we can easily map those. But then this full name here could be, it could be hidden. And then the default value would be if we go into here, we could just say like our actual field. So we say first name and then last name. And there we go. So now the actual field is going to be you're not gonna be able to see this full name field, but we'll be able to reference it in the post management. And they're just gonna put in first name and last name. And then, we'll be able to utilize this full name field though for what we want to do. So that'll be a lot easier for us. So if we save and close this and then we come up to post management, this will solve a couple problems for us. If we come down into here, we can come back to our initial thing and we could say title and we could say, or instead we could not, and we could come back into our initial thing and we could say right here, and we'd say full name, and then we'll say title here because this is our author. We want to affect the title and we want to put the full name in as the title. So if we reran that same test, that should work for us. Now, before we run another test, because I'm pretty confident that's going to work, let's try one more thing. Let's try to affect these relationships. So if we come into our book and we come down to JetEngine relations, we have some options here. So our form field, relation, books to children and parent to child. Remember when I told you need to know which one's the parent, which one's the child? This is really important. So if we're adding a book, like when we're post managing the book, right? And we're adding a book in here, if we have books to authors, then we're adding this individual book that we're adding, we want to add a relation to it, right? All right, so here's the deal. It's several hours later now. I need to tell you what happened because there's a lot of really good stuff that has transpired in this amount of time. And I promise that we will get right back into this tutorial, but this is an important bit for several reasons. So I'm going to inject it right here. Use the timestamps in the chapter, chapters down below in the timeline if you want to just skip ahead. But what happened was I was in the middle of trying to continue to build this tutorial, right? And to build this form and make this all happen for you. And I was kind of going back and forth on how we were actually going to create two posts in the same form, which isn't hard, but relate them at the same time, right? And there was like a little bit of a limitation. When you've done this, as many times as I have, and like you think in these, kind of different ways, let me just run you through because I think this could be really beneficial for you. Let me run you through some different options that you could have taken at this junction that maybe you think about for your next project and maybe it helps you, right? So if you think about this, right, we're looking at this form and we're thinking, okay, we have all of the information. Like we're getting the book title, we're getting all this other stuff. We're able to create a book and we're able to create an author. But the relation part is the issue, right? So your first thought could be, well, maybe there's a workaround. Maybe there's there, I want to kind of like describe these in two different ways. There's one way of thinking where it's a workaround on your end where you can change maybe the design, because sometimes you might have to do this. Change the design, and what I would say maybe is more like the user experience. That's one type of workaround. The other workaround is working around because like we're used to like graphical user interfaces on these tools, and maybe there's not like a UI toggle for what we need to do, right? So those are two ways that I think you should approach a problem like this. I'm going to give you the things that were running through my head as I was thinking about this and then off camera a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you ultimately what I did for you. Well, not what I did for you, but what I started for you, and then I'll tell you who the real person to thank is, and you need to go thank him. Okay. So the first option that you can have is if you have a form like this, you have your title and everything like this, you can think of, okay, well, what is our problem? Our problem is not that we can't create two post types in one thing. We can do that. Our problem is that we don't know our system, our form actions can't get the post ID that we need. Once we create an author, that's great. Like we create like a new author and we want to create a new book and attach it to the author. That's great. We don't have the ability, or we're struggling to find the ability within WS Form to have a situation where it's like, okay, create the author, grab the post ID from that author, and then attach it to the book, and then relate those two things. Create both of them and relate them all in one kind of basically action layer thing here kind of that we have, right? This one action go, one form submission, etc. If you couldn't do that, and you didn't have enough time to get that fixed or put in a support ticket or XYZ or whatever, you could potentially change the user experience. What do I mean? Well, it might be a little more clunky, but you could do something where, okay, you have your form here and you want somebody to add a book. Well, when you get to the authors section, you could say, okay, well, this is how this actually works, right? Like there's basically what we need is we need a list of all the authors because we can't create two and relate them. So you could do something like this. You could create an authors list, and all this does is pull in. I could show you the field how this works. I was just using this for some testing. This is just a simple select field. You come over to options and you say, what are you going to fill in here? And you could say data sources posts, and then you say authors, and you can filter it just like you'd filter like any sort of like queried data or anything. And the only main thing you have to do down here is you got to make sure that you have like the values and the action ID, action variable set to ID, because when JetEngine grabs that data out of there, or we send that over to JetEngine to relate this stuff, it needs to be via the ID. Okay, so that isn't like the preferred solution, but in a different scenario where like you don't have to create two things and you just want to add one custom post type like post, and then in this case, like let's say that you were never going to create authors, but you wanted to add books, you could just have books. Right? You could just have books, like titles and subtitles and all this stuff, and then forget this first name, last name, and bio thing. You could just be like, okay, well, hey, we only have 100 authors in this thing or whatever, however many it is. Just pick the one that it is, right? I know this is bullshit data, but pick the one that it is, and then we'll attach this to this author. Okay? Again, we're staying high level here, and then we'll dive back into the form. So that was one option I thought of. Okay, well, we could do it like that. That doesn't really solve our problem though, because that's not how it was described to me by our viewer. So that doesn't help. So what's the next option? Well, the next option is, I don't know if you've ever been in a form and you've been filling out a form, and then there's like a section in there where it's like you have to like add something in, but it's like its own object, it feels like. So I can't think of a specific example, but it's like you're in a form and then it's almost like a form within a form. Okay. And that was my second thought, was like, okay, wait a second. What if we had a situation like this where maybe in, whatever use case we're thinking up in our mind, maybe we add a book like this, and then we have a situation where maybe we keep this authors list in here, and think of the UX being, I know it doesn't say what it needs to say, but think of the UX being, it's okay, hey, add a book. Okay, we'll put in the information. Then it's like, add an author to that book. First question is your author already in our database? If it is, look through this and see if it is, right? And then if it is, if you click it. If it's not, then we put logic in here to say, okay, well, why don't you just create an author real quick? You'll add it to the database and then you create the book. So I'm not saying that we could do that within the same form necessarily. I didn't test that entirely, but that would be the second thing. A secondary way to do this would be like create another form. And the other form is just adding books. Or I'm sorry, is just adding authors. So then you'd have to prompt them to say, hey, add an author first. And then they add the author. And then they come back and they add a book. And then the author that they just created will be in this list now. You see what I'm saying? That is a different UX. And it's a little maybe clunkier. It's a little, I don't know, there's a lot of corner cases that we're not even thinking about in this. So, it doesn't really matter. But adapt it to your own situation with your own custom post types and everything. But I'm trying to teach you how to think, okay? I'm trying to teach you how to problem solve here, okay? Because when I went in here, there was a little bit of a limitation and I couldn't do exactly what I wanted to do, okay? So those are all the UX type of workarounds, right? Now let's think about, okay, well, we're professionals, okay? We have the UI, right? We have the UI, but you know what? WS Form, beautiful thing about this is like you could do something, like you have so many options. It's not just like 4 buttons that you can press. There's a million things in here. So the next thing my mind went to is like, and again, with help of ChatGPT, I was like, okay, wait a second. I know what needs to happen here. I know that I need to grab the author. I need to create an author. And then I need to be like, hey, we just created an author. All I need to do is grab that post ID somehow and put it into this book situation, right? So I was thinking, how do I grab this? Because there's a lot of variables in here, and there was a lot of really good support articles about like how to get a post ID, specifically if you Google this, how to get a post ID after you create a post in the post management situation here in WS Form. A lot of really good stuff, but it wasn't exactly what I needed in this case. But I was thinking, okay, well, all I need to do is like have some sort of other action in between here where it's like, okay, we have this. Now we need to maybe run a WordPress hook and put some custom code in functions PHP and then put it in here and then do something like this where we just slide this up into here. And then, so we have the author and then we get that post ID somehow. And then we go back into the book, like on the next action, and then somehow we drop that post ID in there and relate it, and bing, bang, boom, it's good. I was a little bit onto something there. Didn't really want to dick around at all with the WordPress hooks, I'll be honest with you. So I ended up kind of scrapping that. And ultimately, what I ended up doing was I tinkered a little bit more, and I want to show you this, but I'm going to spoil the surprise now. Is ultimately this was the hang up right here, where it says JetEngine relations, right? So I'll try to expand this a little bit more here. So JetEngine relations, this section right here, you see this? When you go to add this, what I was expecting to see was right here, you can pick a field, right? So I thought, okay, well, that opens up another world of possibilities. Maybe I could have a hidden field like we did with the full name, right? That could be like author post ID or something like that. And then I could select that field here. And then when the form goes through, I'll be able to pick up that post ID somehow and then drop it into the relation that I need to. The trouble with that was that when I put in the hidden field, I wasn't able to do that because it was grabbing the post ID like you would think it would. I just thought maybe it wouldn't. But it grabs the post ID of the page that you're on. So this is on the home page. So it kept grabbing the home page ID, which is 9. So it kept putting 9 in there every single time, and that's not going to help us, right? So I'm just going through the steps here. What I figured out and what I understood at the time was like, if you want to be a really good problem solver, even though you're a web developer maybe or a web creator or whatever the hell you call yourself, and you're not a coder, you have to think like a logical developer. Like you have to, if you can train your mind to think like that, even if you're not typing code, you can help the developers because they don't think of every single situation how somebody can use their product. And this is how you can be really valuable to them. So what I did was I was like, let me think in my mind how I would solve this if I knew how to solve it, if I had the code base and everything. It's pretty straightforward. What we really need is we just need to be able to put something in here. I actually thought, according to that one support article, all I need to do is instead of making this a field, I could have just, if I just put the post ID, a variable in there, I think that would solve it. So I hit up Mark Westgard, if you have an issue like this, Mark Westgard, I just want to say the creator of WS Form, one of, if not the best customer service plugin creators I've ever dealt with. This is not the first time that I've had something like this happen, and he just whips the stuff up. As soon as like you tell him that it is, I'm not saying to throw random shit at plugin developers. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you have like an actual good use case and good reason, send it out to the support of WS Form or anything else, and state your case and say exactly why it's needed. And good developers, especially Mark, will help you with that because they want to make their products better and you want to get your project done. So it's a win-win, right? So I hit him up and I was like, hey, Mark, and we're also good friends. We see each other at events and stuff like that. So, I hit him up and I was like, hey, I got this thing, and don't be mean either. Like, don't like be like, hey, your shit sucks, da da da, whatever. Like, don't like it's not working. Don't do that, okay? I'll spit some more free game here for you while we're in the middle of this video, okay? Don't do that. What you do is you say, hey, listen, I'm working on this project. And I'm wondering, I've gone through, you also have to, all the shit that I just said for the last 5 minutes, you have to go through that in your head before you take it to somebody, okay? Don't just say this doesn't work. Say, I tried all these different things. I'm literally going down the list of logical options, and I don't think, none of them are really perfect, and I'm wondering if there is a limitation currently, or if I'm not doing it right or whatever, and most of them will help if you give more than you take in that case, right? So I did that to Mark, and he was like, yeah, I think we just really need kind of 2 things. We just need what you said there. Like, so we have this whole section right here. I just want to explain to you guys, and credit to Steve, the viewer that asked about this thing. This right here, this section, this custom JetEngine relation section is brand new. I am absolutely the first one to talk about this because this is literally the couple hours that have gone between me filming and earlier this afternoon and now that has been created from scratch by Mark Westgard. So again, go over and thank him. Go on X and tweet at him or something. Say thank you for this because he's a G. And what this is it gives you the option to, it's the same thing as up here, but instead of just having the fields, you can now put in whatever you want. And this solves our entire problem. That coupled with the new the new variables, okay? Think of all the variable list, like this huge variable list that's in here, right? This huge variable list. All of these, we got more added to them right here in the post section, okay? So there's like post ID, there was post ID. These two right here, these did not exist like an hour ago, okay? So post ID first and post ID last. I'm gonna do my best to kind of explain this to you because it is niche. Like you're not going to need this all the time. Post ID is like the returns of post ID. So like I was saying earlier, if you were had your standard form, a lot of times you'll just like put a hidden field in there and you'll say post ID, default value to the post ID. And then it'll be like, okay, this is whatever page that this form was filled out on. Really useful in certain cases because you could tell like, kind of where it's at. You can trigger different dynamic things depending on that, whatever, right? So that's one option for post ID. But post ID first and post ID last, you can see here, post ID first contains the ID of the first post created during this form submission, useful for referencing the first post in subsequent actions. And then the last is the most recently created post in the previous action, useful for chaining post actions together. So what that means is that now we have access as our thing. Let me just go back to demonstrate. As our thing goes back through here, we could have a ton of these now. And as our thing goes back through, we have the option in subsequent actions to say, hey, I know you just created a post ID. Give me that post ID because I want to do something with it. So when we go into book now, we don't need to do anything special in author. We can just create an author. But when we go into book, we create a book. This is all happening after the thing gets, submitted. We create a book and then we come into, let's get rid of this because we don't need that anymore. We come down to JetEngine relations and we say post ID last, books to authors, our relationship. We want to affect the child because the child is the one that we're grabbing. Like we're on books and that's the parent as we were talking about earlier, and child is the author. So we're connecting an author to this current book. Like you got to think about this as literally like creating a post. This whole thing is creating a post, right? So we're creating a book and this thing would be our author ID. So we say child here, right? Because this is where it's an author ID. And then you could say replace or not replace, like kind of whatever you want there. That's very specific. And then it's going to grab the last post ID that was created. Now, again, depending on how many things that those you have, like how many post actions, post management actions and all that sort of stuff, but it's the last post ID. What was the last post ID that we just created? It was the author post ID when this one just ran. So we put all of that together and, we could save submissions, whatever, none of that matters. But we put all that together and then when we go back to the front end, we put the information in, it's going to do exactly what we want it to do. All right, so I went in and I deleted all of the other data just so we have something here. So we'll say $100 million offers, $100 offers. I think I definitely said $100 offers last time, but $100 million offers. We'll just say it's a cool book because I don't think it has a subtitle, whatever. And we'll say published year was, again, today, and we'll just say like 23 or whatever. This is a summary, which none of this matters here. And then we won't use this. This doesn't really affect anything. It's in the form right now, but it doesn't affect anything. But again, like we could just get rid of this if we wanted to. Or again, you could do like I said earlier and have like different variations, but we can just get rid of that for now. And I'm going to say Alex Hormozy. And then I'm going to say cool rich guy. Okay. And then I'm going to press submit. And then look at that. We have the 3 pieces of information that we had before when we did all this. And then this is not in this custom post type. It's not in the book. It's in the author. And I will show you, I will prove it to you. I will refresh the author. We have Alex Hormozy. I will refresh the books. We have $100 million offers. And then if we scroll to the bottom here, you can see down here, we didn't do any of this on the back end. This was all done on the front end. And they're both linked to each other. And if we got rid of one or the other or whatever, it would delete. And all that information is put in there. So I hope that helps. Okay. I know there was a lot there, especially kind of in these last couple minutes of like explaining all of that and kind of showing how this would work. But I really think the thing that I try to do the most on this channel is teach, the technical stuff. But I think one of the things that I can give you that's more valuable than that is how to think about these things, how to troubleshoot, how to problem solve. And if you really can't solve the problem, how you can still get it solved without you doing it directly, right? Again, that was pretty much the exact same thing here. We probably could have solved this a ton of different ways. But ultimately, sometimes I don't like to reach out to support that often because I like to figure things out myself. But sometimes, especially when I know that certain things would make products better and make products just easier to use or more versatile, I always love to reach out because I think that that's just everybody wants the products to get better, the developers included. So, and especially when you have somebody as great as Mark Westgard behind the the code base of WS Form, you're just going to have a lovely time. So that's all I got for you in this one. Down in the description, couple links, different things, maybe some discounts to the different software you're using. Check those out if you'd like to. Even more importantly, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to comment down there. Or if you have any ideas for me, any ideas like this that you'd like to see me try to play around with and see how I would do them, tell me down there and I will make videos for it. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you got something out of this video, click the like button, make sure to subscribe, and I will talk to you in the next one.